Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Waiting to rise again.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from downtown Baton Rouge, this is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in, Hunt Palmer, coming to you from our studio downtown in the capital city on this Football Friday. Means we're brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. Jacob Beck, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Fired up. You are here with us on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge, LSU in Florida. Tomorrow night under the lights at Tiger Stadium. We will certainly talk about that. Preston Guy will be along in 15 minutes to do so. Also got to talk Saints as they get ready to welcome in the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday afternoon in the Dome. We'll talk about that. SEC picks against the spread, setting the table for the NFL schedule of the weekend. And, of course, final picks for both of those games coming up at the end. These are some of my favorite shows to do, as I talked about last week. But it ratchets up a little bit when you've got Louisiana Tech one weekend and then you got Florida coming in the next. So if you're traveling in from somewhere in the state of Louisiana along the Gulf Coast over in the Houston area, be safe doing so. Lock us in. We appreciate you making us part of your commute. If you're here in Baton Rouge and you're done with the work week, that's a good thing. If you're still on the clock, we'll get you to the finish line here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Let's crank it up the way we do every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
LSU in Florida is always a big deal, and it is this week. It's a really big deal for these two coaches. And when they were hired, a lot of folks said, well, these two are tied at the hip, and we're just going to compare them. And I pushed back on that. I said, that's not really relevant. It is 100% relevant what coaches are available in a given hiring cycle. And back in 2022, when 2021 is when they were hired. 2022 was their first season. So back in December of 2021, the fact that LSU and Florida were both in the market was a big deal because those two are blue bloods. Those two are one of the handful of teams that have a national championship and multiple national championships this century. And they were theoretically aiming for some of the same targets. And that is absolutely 100% relevant when you consider who's hiring who. Just like it was relevant when LSU and Texas were in the market back in 2016. But what Billy Napier does at Florida and what Brian Kelly does at LSU, those are independent of each other, and they do not change the expectation at those programs. If Brian Kelly rips off a bunch of 8 and 4s at LSU, but Billy Napier keeps going 6 and 6 and gets fired at Florida, you don't go, well, dodged a bullet there, we got the right guy. No. You say, well, Brian Kelly's not winning enough games. And if Brian Kelly wins 2 national championships at LSU and Billy Napier has 3 straight perfect seasons at Florida that follow, you don't go, well, we screwed that up. He's got 3 and he's got 2. The expectation at LSU is the expectation at LSU. The expectation at Florida is the expectation in Florida. So I reject the notion that you've got to sit here and quibble over Napier versus Kelly at their current spot. I don't find that relevant at all. At Florida, you're supposed to do the things that Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer did. If you don't, you will be shown the door. Ask Dan Mullen. At LSU, you were expected to compete to win the SEC, to make the college football playoff, and to compete for national championships. I'm not saying it's a requirement to win a national championship at either one of them, but you better be in the mix. And these two guys have not been in the mix through 3 years. So the fact that Billy Napier is 20 and 20 doesn't make Brian Kelly's lack of a college football playoff appearance, lack of an SEC title, 4 losses last year, look any better to me. So now that we've got that settled and we understand that these two guys, when they were hired, it was relevant that both were hiring coaches. Once those hires were made, you got to go swim in your water. And they're not swimming enough. And that is part of the reason that Saturday night is so vital to both of these men. Not because it's one or the other. Not because it's Brian Kelly versus Billy Napier or Billy Napier versus Brian Kelly. That has nothing to do with it. Billy Napier is trying not to go 1 and 2 to start a season in his fourth year, where he is a 500 coach that would fall behind 500 if they lose on Saturday night, and he's still got to play Miami on the road, and he's still got to play A&M on the road, and he's still got to go play Georgia away from his home stadium. He's still got to play Tennessee. He's still got to play Florida State. He's still got to play Texas. This could be the end. You start 1-2 with that gauntlet in front of you, forget it. He knows that. Everybody knows that. And we've talked about it all week. Brian Kelly is not on a similar hot seat if his team loses on Saturday night. You'll have a stadium full and a fan base full of really cranky people if you lose to a team that just lost to South Florida. I will grant you that for sure. But you're not going to have a situation where it's untenable to keep him around any further. You're not having a situation if you lose on Saturday where you can't move forward and accomplish every goal that you've got with this team. Billy Napier drops his second game. You got to go win all the rest of those. Forget it. Brian Kelly could figure things out from here. We've seen him do it before. They were not very good in 2023 early in the season, and they hit stride offensively. They were not great his first year early in the season. They hit stride. They beat Bama. They won the West. You can still do some things. The schedule's too hard for Billy Napier. So what's more important around here, obviously, is Brian Kelly. And what's at stake for Brian Kelly and this program Saturday night in Tiger Stadium? You win this game, you're 3-0 for the first time in Kelly's tenure. You've got an FCS team coming in here next week. You can coast if you're a fan. They got to go to work and practice. They got to recruit. They got to get better. There's no stress next week. And all of a sudden, you go to Oxford, Mississippi, a 4-0 football team, to take on an Ole Miss team that's not nearly what it was. And you're in the top 5, and you're squarely in the mix. You beat Clemson. You beat Florida. As talented as they are, especially on the defensive line, that is a step in the right direction. And you feel like you've got everything in front of you. You lose to Florida. You can't run the ball. Your offense sputters, and you score 10 points. It could, as we talked about on Monday, reveal some significant warts with this team in its current state. And if those warts continue and your offense can't run the ball and you're not productive in terms of moving it, which you're dead last in the SEC in like a lot of offensive categories, it's so easy for that. And some teams are playing, FCS opponents and scoring 77 points and whatever Arkansas is running up on whoever they've played, nobody cares about. But statistically speaking, your offense has not been good enough. And that does count 4 quarters against Louisiana Tech where you weren't great. And if that continues, it would be reasonable then for me to come on the post-game show on Saturday night, for me to come here on Monday, for me to write at LouisianaSports.net and say, hey, this is a serious problem. If it doesn't get fixed with this investment financially into this roster with this many guys who are not going to be here next year, you may have a serious problem on your hands. Now, if you go out there and you have 2 field goals blocked in return for touchdowns and your quarterback gets hurt and he's out for 2 quarters and no further time, well, we'll talk about that loss in a completely different light than, well, your offense has been out there for 3 weeks and it stinks. You'll say, well, what are the odds of that happening? It's a fluky loss. And things like that happen. But let's be real clear. Nobody's going to care about the Louisiana Tech game if you take care of your business in this game on Saturday night. Everybody is going to care about the Louisiana Tech game if you go out there on Saturday and screw it up. And it could be an indictment on this team, which in turn, because this is the team with the most expectations of the Brian Kelly era, it has a negative reflection on your program. That's what's at stake for these 2 coaches. It is a monster game for both. The positive side of this for both teams is so huge. Florida can really move forward feeling like they may have just slipped up last week. You snap a ball over the punter's head. Okay, whatever, we're getting better. They turned it around last year. Maybe they can turn it around this year. You win in Tiger Stadium against a top 5 team. That's a big deal. Billy Napier stays afloat another week. LSU wins this game. Oh, man. What's the potential of this team? Well, limitless as far as the things you can attain in college football in a given season. That stadium is going to be on fire tomorrow night. On fire. And it's going to be up to LSU to play to that standard. We'll get into the X's and O's as we move forward, to kind of close the book on this segment with those 2 coaches and with this game on Saturday night. I believe Brian Kelly made a great decision to pull the plug on his first defensive staff, which was a failure. He went and restocked the shelves, and he went and got Blake Baker. He went and got Corey Raymond. He's had to address defensive line coach a couple times, sure. Baker decided they wanted to go get Jake Olsen run safeties. And they've got a staff in place right now with Kevin Peoples coming in that I think is really, really good. And they've got a defense that looks really, really good. And this is going to bring this game, in my opinion, back to the Matt Flynn, Jacob Hester years, where that was the biggest game on the schedule as far as the style of play we're going to see. Because we know in 2019, 2020, 23, those teams, like, you were going to get into track meets with great offenses if you went to Tuscaloosa and played Tua and those wide receivers, and like you were going to play Clemson with Trevor Lawrence and ETN and T. Higgins and all those guys. Like, you were getting track meets with the best in the country in those years. But if you go back 10 years prior to LSU's early golden years with Les Miles, it was defense in that stadium. Defense in that stadium. Defense in that stadium. There's going to be defense in that stadium coming up on Saturday night. And that's what I'm excited to watch. And I have pretty optimistic thoughts about what LSU's defense is going to be. And I think Brian Kelly's gotten that side of the ball right. Billy Napier's baby is the offense. He's got his 5-star quarterback in his sophomore year. That's the savior of the program. He's going to have to deal with that stadium and that defense to move it forward. I don't care anymore that Brian Kelly and Billy Napier were hired within 3 days of each other. I don't care to compare their resumes at their current stops. What cannot be erased, what cannot be overstated, is how big this game is for both of them at their current spots tomorrow. We'll be talking about it for 2 hours, and I'm fired up to do it. LSU in Florida, 6:30 kickoff inside Tiger Stadium. Our Friday show is brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp, getting out to tailgate on campus. Corks, happy to help you with that. Give them a call this afternoon. They can have you ready and set up for tomorrow. They're great at catering for your tailgates, for your watch parties, for your birthday parties, to feed the office. CorksFishandShrimp.com is a website. Check them out on Government between Foster and Jefferson. They bring you our Friday shows, Corks, Fish, and Shrimp. We'll take a timeout. Come back with Preston Guy next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group. HighlandIG.com is that website. It is storm season. It's been quiet around here. That's a good thing. And it's bright sunshine on this gorgeous Friday in the capital city. But we know there are risks when you set up shop here in South Louisiana on the Gulf Coast. If your property policy was just the cheapest one you could find, do you know what the fine print says? Do you know how your building valuation was done? Do you know what co-insurance penalties you may pay in the sense of a loss? Do you know how your business interruption limits got put into place? Do you know what your named storm deductible is? Is it a wind and hail deductible? All these things need to be considered before the storm hits. Don't be reactive. You can't go back and change the policy once the storms hit. Your business interruption limit is wrong. Your business could be in some trouble financially. Don't let that happen. The Howard Insurance Group can make sure that it doesn't. Jonathan Carver and his team are experts when it comes to coverage. They've got dozens of markets they can place your property program with. They can handle the risk appetite here in South Louisiana. They can make sure it's the right price, the right coverage. That's the key when you buy insurance. Jonathan Carver and his team can help you with it. It's the Highland Insurance Group. Find them online, HighlandIG.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp.
Set the scene for Sunday in the National Football League coming up here in our next segment. Always have Preston Guy, TigerBait.com with us at 1:15 talking football. We do so now on the Jim's Farm sideline. Preston, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing quite well. I know you spent a lot of time watching film of that Louisiana Tech game, which I'm sure was not super fun to do on the offensive side of things. What's wrong with the offense?
Well, I'll tell you what. I always do deep dive film studies whenever there's like a burning question. What is wrong with the offense? Or this was 10 times more fun than what was wrong with the defense after Ole Miss in 2023. Way more fun because, you're watching that film against Ole Miss and you're like, I just don't know if they got the Jimmies and Joes to fix this. And that was apparent. That's definitely not the case looking at this offense. There's a lot of talent and there's a lot of proven, capable guys who struggled. But what really stood out to me was just how bad Garrett Nussmeier was, given Garrett Nussmeier is a fantastic player. And he's proven that for more than a year. He has more than 6,000 yards in his career. And you just hope that this is that one-off game. And, in fact, if you go look at every Heisman winner outside of Joseph Lee Burrow, okay, every one of them has a crappy game, okay? And I think this was hopefully the crummy game that Nussmeier has, and hopefully he has a strong bounce back. But outside of that, you can't really run blocking seems to be a serious problem. They have to do something to straighten it out, and it is a variety of problems and from a variety of guys. That might be the one area I don't see an easy answer. Let's put it like this. I do think Nussmeier can get in better sync with Berry and Brown. I do think the receivers are going to be more reliable catching the ball. I think that's the one that might be problematic.
All right, we'll get to Nussmeier in a second, but I want to stick on the offensive line then since you watched it. Like, this is a completely different group. So I could suggest last year, like, maybe these guys are just really good at pass blocking and just aren't good at run blocking. But if you give me an entire new group of guys and they're not good at run blocking either, like, what am I supposed to suggest about that?
Well, I went back and did a little bit of a study on Brad Davis's offensive line run performance during his time. I would argue since 2021, pass blocking, they've done pretty well. But did you know that in 55 football games since he got hired as the offensive line coach, they've only had a 100-yard rusher from the running back spot? I'm not counting Jaden Daniels and his, wizardry as good offensive line blocking, because a lot of that was pass blocking and he found a lane. But it's only happened 11 times. 1 out of 5 games, you will have a 100-yard rusher at LSU. And I just can't remember with any consistency in that tenure that any of these offensive linemen have ever had a good time producing holes for running backs. And what kind of makes it sound, I don't know if it's better or worse, but you would think if you have 8 guys drafted in the NFL, which is what Brad Davis has had since he started at LSU, you would have at least found a little bit of consistency producing holes for running backs. But really, since 2021, LSU's never had that.
There's a feeling that Braylon Moore makes a big difference. Do you believe that?
Of course he does. I don't want to disparage certain players, but the guy coming in for him had some rough tape out there against Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech's a team that hasn't had a player drafted in the NFL since 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And these guys are really just kind of physically dominating in a lot of these reps, whereas Braylon Moore was holding his own against Clemson. In fact, I think it was offensive lineman of the week in the SEC.
Yep.
So, that's a big, big drop off if Braylon Moore is not there. So getting him back and having him on the probable side of things, that's really good. That being said, an ankle sprain like that as an offensive lineman, that's going to bug you. So you have to wonder, is he going to be 100%? Probably not. Is he going to be 95%? You hope so.
Needs to play on Saturday and then take a week off is my opinion on that, but I'm no doctor or coach, so we'll see how that goes after this game against Florida. Back to Nussmeier. What concerns you? Was it just an accuracy thing, or were there some misreads as well?
There were misreads and accuracy. I think I counted 13 bad snaps on him. He held onto the ball too long twice, took sacks, and it was almost equal. I think it was 6 inaccurate throws and 5 misreads. Where there's an open player and he's just throwing it to someone who's not open, and that is, that's concerning that you have a 5th-year senior making both of those mistakes. I'll say this, throw to Berry and Brown early in the game where he was running down the sideline, and Nussmeier just short-armed him by maybe 10, 15 yards, and it wasn't he got hit, it wasn't he had a messy pocket, it was just he's wide open, and Nussmeier just threw a duck. That one is particularly concerning, but I'm willing to sit here and say, okay, it was a game against Louisiana Tech. You won. You have a strong body of work that shows that you're better than that. Let's move on and keep these inaccurate throws to a minimum. Certainly on his deep balls, he does have a history of missing on them with certainly some frequency, but he certainly hits on enough of them to be effective. So all of these things are concerning to see in your second game from your 5th-year senior. But at the same time, I think that the body of work tells you it will be a one-off.
Chatting with Preston Guy, TigerBait.com here on this Football Friday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. As far as the game plan goes, you got Tyreek Sapp, you got Caleb Downs on that front for Florida. That kind of sounds like Parker and Woods for Clemson. Do you feel like it'll look kind of similar, testing the edge, jet sweep stuff, and some quick passing?
Yeah, and look, Hunt, I think I'm not so certain that that's just not the game plan moving forward for this team. I think that they've identified that this is not an offensive line that's going to go out there and bully people. They have to get creative and play around it. I mean, there's a lot of elements in this offense. Xavier Thomas getting involved in the running game. All these things are not by coincidence. All these screens that we're seeing short middle screens. These are all things to artificially create a running game, a physical running game that isn't there, that you're not capable of, because you couldn't dominate Louisiana Tech in the trenches. So these SEC teams should be a lot more difficult. I think it's going to be very similar to Clemson. The hope here is just that in those crucial plays, you're executing a little bit better. But it does seem like the last 2 years, that's been the story. Is this offense moves the ball, and then when it's time to produce and put points on the board, they tend to shoot themselves in the foot.
How do you feel about LSU standing up to Florida? Veteran offensive line, Jaden Ball on the ground with the run game.
Yeah, I mean, look, the LSU's defense has shown me nothing to suggest that they're going to struggle. I mean, it's certainly a physical team that they bring here. The signature of Billy Napier, but this front seven is just nasty for LSU. I mean, these guys they look good in fall camp, and somehow after 2 games they look even better. That's why, as negative as it sounds like I'm talking about the offense, I am not sleeping on this LSU team. They are absolutely every bit of a contender. That defense is nasty. They look like the 07, 03, 11, those championship defenses we've seen. It looks like one of those.
Is there somebody when you watch on tape that's standing out that we may not see just watching the TV cut or being inside the stadium, somebody that's maybe under the radar that's having a great 2 first games?
Oh, let's see here. That's under the radar. See, my focus is mostly on what went wrong.
Yeah.
I'll say this, man. That Aaron Anderson block there on the Harlem Berry run, that was pure heart and effort. That's the kind of thing that makes championship football teams. That's something that not enough people are talking about. It's just the sheer effort that Aaron Anderson is giving. I do think Barry Brown's your most talented receiver as a 6'5", 4'2", guy, right? But in terms of just the effort and energy bringing the team, Aaron Anderson is just the guy. Harlem Berry's putting out some solid tape, too. So I'd love to see Harlem Berry start getting 5 or more touches a game.
What's the key Saturday night?
Hey, look, man, the key is when it's your time to put points on the board, get those points on the board. You know, stop with the drops in crucial third down situations. Stop with the misreads. Just do what you're capable of doing on the offensive end of things. I think your defense is going to give you every chance to win this game if you put up 17 points.
How does it go Saturday night?
I think LSU does take care of business. I think LSU's offense will look improved. I still think they're going to work through some synergy issues, some connection issues from time to time, but I think they cut their mistakes in half. I think LSU is going to win somewhere around the score of 27-13, something about that effect.
A 2-score win would be impressive to me. I think that's a talented Florida team. I know it happened last week, but a 2-score win would be quite a nice thing to go into an FCS week with it. I know you all have the post-game show and your podcast on Monday. Tell them about it.
Yep. We'll be going live about an hour after the game. We'll be leaving the press box, heading home, doing our show, and then I don't know if I'll be doing my show Monday night or not. I will be out of town this week, so we are working on that. So y'all can pay attention to my Twitter where I'll post an update at PGuy77, but the Monday night show might have some problems, but we'll definitely be there Saturday night.
And I'll be here next Friday talking Tiger football on the Hunt Palmer Show. It's Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. Have a great weekend, man. Thanks.
All right, Hunt. See you soon.
Now let's set the table for the NFL weekend to come on Sunday. We'll do that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp that bring you our Friday shows. Delicious jumbo Gulf shrimp, crispy fried catfish. Heck of a po' boy, too. If you're in Baton Rouge, whether you live here or you come in for the games, you're thinking, man, I'd love to get down on a po' boy, either for Friday at lunch, for Saturday pregame, get something in your belly before you go out there, or even Sunday when you need some grease in your belly. Corks can help you out with all of that. They got a fantastic fried shrimp po' boy and get you a catfish po' boy as well. Try their famous baked potato. It's got the crawfish etouffee and their jumbo golden fried shrimp on top. Always a winner. Check out the whole menu. corksfishandshrimp.com. They got the catering menu there. They got the family size menu there. They got all their salads and, of course, all their specials like the platters as well as the po' boys. It's Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. You can find them online at corksfishandshrimp.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
"28 minutes from now, I will give you Southeastern Conference football picks against the spread. And I'm feeling great about it. Confidence level unbelievably high.
What was your record last week?
2-9.
Okay, so why do you feel great about this week?
I don't think it was that bad. Was it 3-9?
It was 2-9.
2-9?
Yes.
That's not very good.
It's bad.
I don't think that's right.
It
had
is.
to be better than 2.
No, it's right.
2. 2's terrible.
It is. So why do you feel so good about this week?
Because I'm an elite college football mind. I'm one of the great analysts of all time. They pay me multiple $1,000s every single year to sit in this seat and give you picks.
Then why did you go 2-9 last week?
Well, look, you just watch the tape.
The tape is bad.
You get back to it and you figure out what was plaguing you.
Okay.
And you get out there and you make the adjustment.
All right, here's what happened on the tape. You sucked. That's what happened.
We'll see. 25 minutes, 25 minutes from now. We'll
Okay.
get after it. But for now, let's set the stage for the National Football League. Tier 4, worst games of the week. There are 2 of them. Patriots at Dolphins. Tua, 7-0 versus the Patriots all time. Not Tom Brady's Patriots, obviously. The Dolphins have covered 9 straight games against New England. So if you're a bettor like me that's elite at picking games, as we just discussed, just keep that in mind. The Patriots never cover against the Dolphins. And the other one, same division. The other 2 teams, Bills at the Jets. The Bills were not very good on defense against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. They got up 238 yards on the ground. And the Jets did run for 182 yards against Pittsburgh in week 1. The Bills have not allowed the Jets to score 23 points in 12 straight games. So we'll see if the Jets can get things moving a little bit. I don't think so. I think the Bills crush them. That's why I've got it in tier 4. Let's move up to tier number 3. A little bit better, but still not must-see TV. The Jaguars at the Bengals. I've watched Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow play against each other in person. It was great. There was confetti all over the field after the game. Travis Hunter for the Jaguars is going to try to play a little bit more defense this week. That means he's going to be playing against Jamar Chase and Travis Hunter. Last week, the Bengals were the first team to win a game with under 10 yards in the second half since 1995. That's a heck of a nugget, but they won. That's all I care about. They hadn't won a week 1 opener in forever. The Giants are at the Cowboys. Great NFC East rivalry. Not necessarily a great game this time around, but the Cowboys have won 8 straight and 15 of 16 against the Giants. That's almost impossible to do in the division, but the Cowboys have done that to the G-men. Malik Neighbors was asked about that earlier this week. He said, I don't have any comment on that, so that's what Malik had to say about that. The Rams are at the Titans. It's a rematch of the greatest show on turf Super Bowl. Puka Nacua needs 12 catches to tie Odell Beckham Jr. for the most catches ever through 30 NFL games. 12 catches is a lot, but theoretically he could get there and pass Odell Beckham. The Browns are at the Ravens. We talk a lot about teams that hate each other. If I was a Browns fan, I would absolutely detest the Baltimore Ravens. I just feel like I would. It's like they went over there, like, took your team. It just sounds awful. And they're in the division. The Browns have won 2 out of 3 against Baltimore. Ravens 12-2 after a loss since 2022. So with Lamar under Harbaugh, they've been really good after a loss. Had a tough one last week. And the Panthers are at the Cardinals. You got Bryce against Kyler, number 1 picks there that are dueling. The Cardinals haven't started 2-0 since 2021, which is the last time they made the playoffs. Bryce Young on the road as a starter. Not very good. 1-13 for young Bryce on the road. This is going to be a tough challenge for him. All right, up to tier 2. This is the good stuff. Bears are at the Lions. It's Ben Johnson's return to Detroit, where he did such a good job as the offensive coordinator. He's the coach now of the Bears. Jared Goff, 10-0 after a loss in his last 10 games. The Lions been really good, bouncing back. They got to do that at home this week. The Seahawks are at the Steelers, also a recent Super Bowl. If the Steelers win, they're 2-0 in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 2016-2017, which kind of surprised me to read that. They've been so consistent on Mike Tomlin, but not a lot of back-to-back 2-0 starts. The Falcons are at the Vikings. Michael Penix threw for 298 yards last week. Is he for real? J.J. McCarthy was great in the second half on Monday Night Football last week. Is he the real deal? Two guys that were brought in, didn't start to begin last year. Penix was on the bench behind Cousins, and McCarthy was hurt, but they might have some talent, might be able to be the quarterback of the future for the Falcons and the Vikings. All right, 2 games in Tier 1 this week, the best games of the weekend. Broncos at the Colts. The Colts scored on all 7 of their possessions last week, and the Broncos have an elite defense led by Pat Surtain. What's got to give there in Indy? I like the Broncos. I think Sean Payton's got a really good team this year. I'm going to ride them a little bit here. I think they do a good job and they win the game at the Colts. But the Colts, really impressive last week in Miami. And the Eagles at the Chiefs, of course, that's tier number 1. It's a Super Bowl rematch. There have only been 3 previous Super Bowl rematches in weeks 1 or 2. The Super Bowl champion, 1 or 2 in those games. The only winner, 2016 Broncos, beat the Panthers in the Super Bowl and then came back and beat them. That is setting the table for the National Football League in week number 2. A lot of people are sick of Eagles-Chiefs. I'm going to watch that. I think that's a quality game. And sneaky game, Bears at the Lions. I think the Lions take care of them. There's a lot of really disappointed people in Chicago that felt like after they really got off to a good start on Monday Night Football and they gagged it against the Vikings, they're still trying to climb that mountain and they haven't done it. It's a division game against a team that's looking not to go 0-2. I'm a little bit down on the Lions because the 2 coordinators gone, even though I hate to do that to my guy Calvin Shepard.
Didn't look good last week.
A good Tiger. No. But I thought they had a tough matchup on their hands last week.
Yeah, they did.
But
6.5 point favorites in that one, though.
They are. Are you out on Eagles Chiefs?
No, I mean, it's always, I don't know. I understand, and I was one of the people that was tired of seeing the same teams, like seeing the Patriots in the Super Bowl every year was kind of annoying. But I'll say this, I don't know why people get tired of watching good football. I mean, the Chiefs and the Eagles are both really good, and it should be a really...
I'm not super high on the Chiefs this year.
Well,
I'm not picking them to win their division.
Yeah, no.
It could be really good.
Well, right.
It's just me. My bad
Here's
opinion.
the thing. They weren't good last year, but they just kept winning games. They kept winning games by 1 point.
I think, and they got to the Super Bowl.
They did, but what I'm saying is, it wasn't
they weren't dominant.
No, they wasn't the usual Chiefs. So they kept winning these really close games, and so they just weren't at the standard that you would expect from them.
The mid-20s Mahomes with Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase and the ridiculous speed at running back.
Not Jamar Chase.
Not Jamar Chase. What was I looking for there? Travis Kelce. I don't know why Jamar Chase came to mind, but Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. They always just cycled through ridiculous running backs, and that was a dominant death machine. This is not that anymore. Their defense is better than their offense, but they just have Mahomes. But I'm still high on the Eagles. Think they're going to be awesome. I'm not as high on the Chiefs. I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles go to KC and win.
Yeah.
And then the other one I wanted to mention briefly, Jags-Bengals. I gave a little line there about Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow. But could the Bengals go 2-0? Could it happen? They're
should.
at home.
They should.
That would make me so happy if they were 2-0. I'd really like them to play some playoff games in Cincinnati instead of going to Buffalo and having to deal with the Ravens and going to Arrowhead. That's a death wish. You can't do that.
Couple of interesting tidbits for a couple of games though. Dolphins Patriots. If the Dolphins lose that game, it is. I've heard that apparently the Dolphins may try to ship Tyreek Hill out with all the stuff that's going around him, and the Chiefs, of course, probably could use a receiver. So maybe he goes back to Kansas City.
Something.
So that would be very interesting. And then it's just the Dolphins were not very good last year, and they looked really bad last week against a Colts team who nobody expects anything from. So is the Mike McDaniel Tua thing already kind of crumbling?
Probably.
Would be crazy.
The shelf life on those things is just incredibly short, generally speaking. The Peyton Breeze, Belichick, Brady thing
just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen very often. It's just really hard to do. So,
and then the Giants, if they go in and lay down in front of the Cowboys in Arlington, then do the Giants go to Jackson Dart next week with Russell Wilson?
Here's the trivia question. We'll close on the NFL and get to the Saints. Just the Saints game. Does Jackson Dart start for the Giants against the Saints? That's in 3 weeks.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So. I would say absolutely because if they lose this week, I mean, let's see what they've got ahead.
Is it 3 weeks or 4 weeks? Is it Patriots first and then?
They've got so they get Cowboys this week, then Chiefs, Chargers, Saints. So it is 3 weeks.
3 weeks. So I didn't know this. I know the Saints next two are Seattle and Buffalo. I didn't know if they came back for New England or they came back for the Giants.
Yes.
They back-to-back home games.
This game is, I guess, slightly winnable, but they're not beating the Chiefs. They're not beating the Chargers. So they could foreseeably be 0-5.
That could be spicy in the dome.
3, 4. No, the 0-4 going into New Orleans.
Could have some 0 for teams.
Yeah, we could.
In that game.
Very well could, but I cannot see them starting the season 0-4 and not just letting Jackson Dart go out there.
We'll see. All right, let's talk some Saints-49ers when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Every car that's on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. And when you buy that new vehicle, one of the coolest things is getting behind the wheel and seeing all the great features that a Genesis vehicle has to offer. But sometimes when you buy that new vehicle, wherever you may buy it from, and you got to deal with those features, you get out in the parking lot, it may be raining, it may be 1,000 degrees. It's a miserable experience. Not at Genesis, because they think of details. They want you to be comfortable at all times. So one of the things they did when they built this brand new showroom, that's, by the way, gorgeous, they've got this climate control room that they pull your car into so you can go through all the features with your brand ambassador in the comfort of air conditioning. No rain. It's a small thing, but it's important for that moment when you're buying that vehicle. They've got valet for your test drives, for your maintenance. All of that can be done without you really lifting a finger. And even if you want to buy a vehicle at Genesis Baton Rouge without going to this dealership, you can do that. They'll deliver it to you, and you can do some e-contracts. You're all set. Get behind the wheel of a Genesis. If it's time to buy a car today, if it's time to buy a car next month, if it's time to buy a car next year, give Genesis a shot. You will understand the Genesis difference. It's a luxury brand at a reasonable price. It's their airline at PQ, and, of course, you can find them online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com, GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Friday show is brought to you by Corks, government between Foster and Jefferson. Swing on by the drive-thru, get some late lunch here on this Friday. How about a shrimp po' boy? How about a catfish po' boy? Crispy shoestring fries. They got you covered over there at Corks. Check out the menu, corksfishandshrimp.com. SEC picks against the spread coming up in about 13 minutes. Saints and 49ers from the Dome on Sunday. A couple of teams that have been banged up for years and are a little bit banged up here in week 2. Of course, it's going to affect San Francisco a little bit more, considering that it's their starting quarterback that's not going to play and their best playmaker on offense is not going to play in George Kittle, certainly. But let's talk about the Saints injuries here and what they mean for this game specifically. Chase Young and Trevor Penning are not going to play on Sunday. The first one I want to talk about is Trevor Penning, because the Saints did not have Trevor Penning in the game last week. And they still did a good job blocking for the run. Last week, the Saints averaged 3.7 yards per contact before contact, which is 4th best in the league. And last week, the 49ers were a little bit better stopping the pass than the run. So to me, even though Penning is out, and you feel like Penning is actually one of your better run blockers, you did the job last week blocking on the ground. And it wasn't a gaudy effort, but it was a well-blocked effort, and it was a functional effort running the football. I think you now have 2 guys you can trust a little bit, because it wasn't a big sample size last week when you look at what Kendre Miller was able to do, but there were flashes, and you know what Kamara is. If I'm the Saints, and I'm Kellen Moore, and I'm Doug Nussmeier, try to get that ground game going in the way that you blocked it up last week. You'd like to have Penning, but you don't have him. And if you can do that, it's something we've talked about back to August. You just make Spencer Rattler's life so much easier. 1, he's not throwing the ball if you hand it to him. You didn't do anything, just hand the ball. That's easy. You can do that. 2, get into 2nd and 6. Get into 3rd and 3. Stay out of 3rd and 11, where Bosa can be a nightmare on young tackles. If you stay ahead of the chains, I think the Saints can be okay in this game from an offensive perspective. And if you can run the ball and then maybe get into some advantageous spots where you can play action and maybe get some guys running down the field, namely Rashid Shaheed, like you can maybe get some easy throws or some big plays from Spencer Rattler. The Spencer Rattler I saw last week was okay. He didn't hurt you last week. Wasn't perfect, wasn't explosive, wasn't gaudy, wasn't eye-catching, but he was okay. And I think he can be okay against this San Francisco team. But if you get him into bad spots with incomplete passes on first down, which leads to 2nd and 10s, and then you try to run it, and it's 3rd and 8, and then you got Bosa and that crew coming off the edge, like that is a recipe for disaster for this team. They've got to run the football in this game. Get Kamara involved, lessen his workload with Kendre Miller, get the ball moving on the ground. Defensively, not having Chase Young in this game stinks. We talked yesterday about Mac Jones. Mac Jones will turn the football over. He will do it. But you need to pressure him to do that. And Chase Young's the best pressure guy the Saints have. If you listen to everybody who was at camp early on, like he was their best defensive player. And he's not healthy. So now you need Carl Granderson and you need the fountain of youth, which Cam Jordan found last week. He was great. Sack and a half, getting back there, making plays. You know that Brazil can give you a little bit of that as well. So I think the pass rush against Mac Jones, hopefully, Brandon Staley has a plan to get Mac Jones sped up a little bit. Because he doesn't have a security blanket in George Kittle. His number one receiver in this game is Ricky Pearsall. That's not an NFL number one. That's not a San Francisco offense that used to hum with Deebo Samuel on the outside, that has relied on George Kittle to be an integral part of what they've done for better than half a decade. Ricky Pearsall, you ought to be able to run with him. I get that Marvin Harrison's a bit of a matchup problem last week. Not Ricky Pearsall. So get them into those situations you're trying to keep Spencer Rattler out of and get after him. Now, you got to shut down Christian McCaffrey, but you've got linebacking core that you feel pretty good about. Got to be in position. I like the Saints matchup in this game because of what San Francisco is missing. If Brock Purdy and George Kittle were healthy going into this game, I would not give the Saints much of a shot. I give the Saints a real shot on Sunday. You're looking at the line on this game now that everything's settled from an injury perspective, looking at a 3.5-point number that San Francisco is favored by. Saints aren't going to be favored a lot this year. Just get used to that. Like that's not going to happen very often. But like I said last week, I thought that the Saints would be within a score in the fourth quarter. They were. I'm confident the Saints will be within a score in the fourth quarter in this game. But I had a little bit more confidence in Kyler Murray last week than I did in Spencer Rattler, which he almost proved me wrong because he went down there and made the throw that could have gotten them to the finish line. I don't blame Juwan Johnson for dropping it, but the throw was pretty good for that coverage. I do not trust Mac Jones at all. At all. When you are that high a draft pick and you're on your third team in 4.5 years, like that's a big flag, and it is red. So I think the Saints keep this thing close. I'll give you a pick at the end of the show, but the lean here, I think this is a game the Saints can get, and it's a game the Saints need to get. Not because they're going to make the playoffs, not because they're playing for home field advantage, not because they're going to win the Super Bowl. The Saints need to win this game because you just don't want to start 0-4. You don't want to start 0-5, 0-6, 0-8. It's just hard to cultivate a winning culture with loss after loss after loss after loss, and there's nothing to show for it on the other side. You've got 2 road games coming this week that feel, this next 2 weeks, that just don't feel all that winnable. In the NFL, you can go do it, but it doesn't feel like they're going to go do it. At home, backup quarterback, you're relatively healthy besides those 2 guys we mentioned. Jonas Sanker gets an opportunity to go out there and play on defense, and I'm excited to watch him. Hopefully the Dome is in good spirits on Sunday, and hopefully the Saints can give him something to cheer about. I got a feeling about Sunday with the Saints, and I'm hopeful they can cash in on that. Saints and Niners, noon, Fox, over there in the Superdome. That's our look at that ball game. All right, our Friday show is brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. By now you well know that. Been a fast-moving and busy first hour, as they always are here on our Football Fridays. We Talked about Billy Napier and Brian Kelly and what this game Saturday night means to them at the top of the show. Preston Guy, TigerBait.com was with us at 1:15. We got you set up for the NFL weekend to come at 1:30. Then a little bit of Saints and 49ers. Kind of hit all our bases there. If you missed any of it, you can catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Hunt on LSU for your LSU stuff. Hunt on Saints for all your Saints stuff. Reminder really quickly about our schedule tomorrow for game day here on the Guarantee family of networks at 1:30. Eagle on 8.1 game day from Rouse's. Charles Handicraft, Matt Musso will go 3 hours. They'll hand it off to the LSU Sports Radio Network. That's me. 4:30. We will start from on campus there in our fan zone across the street from Tiger Stadium. You can hear that on Eagle on 8.1. 30 minutes after the game goes final. Me, Brandon, and Marlon on the postgame show. 90 minutes after it goes final. You'll have Charles and Richard on Eagle on 8.1 postgame. So start at 1:30 tomorrow for your LSU Florida coverage. We'll pause for national headlines. We will come back. We'll pick SEC games against the spread. I'm going undefeated.
The Hunt Palmer Show.